Okay, welcome back, everyone. This is theCUBE's coverage here in Palo Alto, California, theCUBE studios. I'm John Furrier, host of theCUBE. This is part of our ongoing East Coast, West Coast program, theCUBE plus the NYSE Wired. It's our Silicon Valley studios. Of course, we've got the East Coast studio at the floor of the NYSE. We're creating a backbone of community and connecting it together through media. Daphne de Jong is here, founder and CEO of Venn. Daphne, great to see you. Did I get that right?
Yep, you got it right.
Okay, all right. Pronunciation is a great last name. We met last night and we're telling you about your background is just so impressive. I love your history and you're doing like, I think one of the coolest things that we've been talking about in theCUBE that not a lot of people are talking about the scalable, where we're at with scale, and I want to get into that in a second, but give a background in what your previous experience, you worked at all the cool companies, okay?
Hopefully, I'm glad you think that.
I think cool. Give us a rundown, give us the quick list.
Yeah, I try to get in when things are really interesting. So early on, R&D stage, lots to learn, nobody really knows what you're doing, and you just collect a lot of really smart people in order to figure it out. And so worked on autonomous drones for Amazon, was at Google X working for Waymo, so Google self-driving, you see them everywhere now. SpaceX, product for Starlink, which is pretty big now too, and then I started my own company. Yeah,
all real big ideas, big movements, real disruptive enablement, but hard, big things that people poo-pooed. I mean, at those early days, when these big ideas happen, most people go, oh, well, science project.
Oh yeah.
You know,
which it is sometimes.
And they pan out now. Starlink is just, I love Starlink, I gotta say. It's just, I have friends that have boats, they sail out, they do their Zooms on Starlinks, and then obviously SpaceX, I mean, just, the Marvel is just phenomenal.
Yeah.
So, obviously you like to have fun, right?
Yes.
These hardcore tech problems. Talk about your new venture you're working on now.
Yeah, so what we do is we do automated underwriting for new asset classes. So risk underwriting for both insurance carriers and private equity at the moment. And we're trying to make it easier to allocate capital and actually get through the financing contracts.
Yeah, we were talking before you came on about some of the things that need this financing you're working on, and they're big CapEx, and we all been following the cloud. It's like people are doing nuclear reactors, Amazon, they're all getting in that game. Need a little bit cleaner energy, but there's now huge opportunities to solve problems that didn't exist even years ago, because now you have essentially NVIDIA, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, even throw Oracle in there if you want some database, but the clouds have like supercomputing capabilities.
Absolutely.
This is game changer now to go for entrepreneurs to recognize opportunities. What are some of the opportunities that you see out there that are emerging that an entrepreneur can say, wow, that's an opportunity, I want to go after it?
Yeah. I'm biased. I think it is, I'm focusing on private markets, things that the government is not able to do or is not going to do in the next decade. And so I care a lot about what you can do as an entrepreneur independently of regulations and incentives, which I think is a really good time for that. And so I know people who are working on, energy transition in general, and like, how do you support the build out of data centers? How do you support newer material developments and things like that? I think I see a lot of talent being pulled from more like bigger companies to, hey, why didn't I just do this myself? And why didn't I collect a smart team and figure out this problem? That's why I mentioned nuclear reactors. I think that's a really big vertical that will be required to support this newer industry. Google came out with a new quantum sort of revolution lately, and I think that will be a really interesting field that a lot of people will be looking at in order to think about those more exponential capabilities.
When you look at the things you're underwriting, obviously a lot of CapEx we know with the data center, but is there other mechanisms that you're looking at, and how does the financial markets flex to this? Because normal, you have the Bitcoin crowd, they'll throw money at anything. There's got a lot of Bitcoin billionaires hitting the scene with over 100,000 price per Bitcoin. So you're seeing a lot of that money come in, you're seeing a lot of capital markets forming. What's the state-of-the-art financing knobs that you're turning?
Yeah, what instruments are part of it basically, and who's allocating money where? I think it's a combination, because usually it used to be like Department of Energy, Department of Transportation, et cetera. And it's more and more so private markets. It is growth capital, it's private equity. It is usually a hybrid of multiple options, bonds. And it's coming from many different sectors as well as corporations. And I love to see it, because I think being able to allocate capital to these, in some cases, assets that help solve problems around energy transition, climate-specific problems, I care a lot about. And so being able to move that faster by looking at hybrid financing mechanisms is really,
It's
really
interesting. If you look at like SpaceX, and it's pretty obvious now, everyone can see it, but the early days, it was competitive to the government.
Right.
And now the government's using SpaceX and a lot of stuff that Elon has built in the team. So as privatization becomes more viable, I think it's going to be more the trend. What areas do you think the government may step up on that'll be either hybrid, private-public, and where do you think private could go all the way on?
I look at NASA and I look at how NASA changed over the last decades. It became from doing everything vertically as part of the organization and actually allocating a lot of capital to research. I think what they're doing now is they're still doing research, but not so much the implementation, all these different verticals anymore. So they became more of an advisor to companies, to the private industry, and I think that will happen with other organizations too, and which is better for taxpayers in the long term, I think. And it comes with a lot of opportunities when it comes to allocating capital elsewhere, and maybe that helps grow technologies a little faster.
Okay, I got to ask you, Daphne, if you can scope the order of magnitude of the kind of financing we're talking about here, because my first guess is it's probably large numbers. Because of the project scopes are big. So, but okay, now if we're going to finance that, it's not a seed round. It's like, hey, pre-seed is like $2 billion. I mean, I'm a little bit over the top, but like, I mean, they're big numbers. How does the capital markets look at that? And how do they frame it in their mind? 10-year horizon, probably longer horizons, cost of capital, payback. Take us through some of the sausage making involved in the packaging, because the entrepreneurs just want gas, right? They want to get going. They want to get.
So what's interesting is some reasons why it can take long is because of a lack of understanding of the particular business, and it's hard to actually underwrite the risk. And that's for multiple reasons. But most insurance companies, they'll need about 5 years of historic data to cover these asset classes. And you don't have that. And so you have to look at different data sets. You have to find signals from limited data. And that's something that we're doing, but it's not widely available. It's hard to do. And in these contracts, they're not so flexible today, but what you ideally want is that the terms can maybe change depending on what you learn. You can make adjustments, you know what's happening before it's actually happening, and especially relevant to, new mobility. Think about eVTOL aircraft. They haven't been widely deployed, but the moment they will be, we're going to start learning a lot. And that's when you want the lenders to be able to adjust their strategies based on those learnings. So they need access to data beyond risk, but risk is a really big part of it, right? And so they need, in order to even finalize those contracts, they need warranties, they need to be able to guarantee the risk of that.
And you do a lot of the legwork in terms of the financial modeling, synthetic data, fill in the gap. So you're a data company. You're a data company with the big prize of the financing. What's been the reaction? Can you share? It might be confidential, but I'll ask anyway. But like, what are some of the dynamics, conversations? You don't have to name names, but like, what's it like? What is it? How does it work? I mean, we'll throw in here if they come in. I mean, or is it classic, just straight up math, finance, value proposition?
Actually, the way it's worked so far is the end customer has reached out to us. So I'll keep going back to the eVTOL customer example because it's a bit easier to talk about. They reached out and said, we can't find anyone to underwrite our assets. Nobody really can do it well. Can you help us? And so it's oftentimes driven from a need of, how we're going to do this. I think a lot of insurance companies have moved away from a bit of the underwriting business. There's a lot of outsourcing of that. And so that piece of proprietary data doesn't necessarily belong to those companies anymore. And that's the technology that we're building out. And so because it's so driven by the end customer, you can adjust very well to their needs. And we'll have more information than maybe just a lending partner that hasn't really, been diving deep into that.
So you're iterating on the contracts based upon as new data comes in, either validating the synthetic or
we build models for different industries, for different verticals, and those models will get better over time. So think about it as, in order to do underwriting of a new category, you pull in a subject matter expert. Instead, our model will become the subject matter expert. And so, yes, you start with sometimes limited data, but you're able to model that and find those signals that are important by using more creative processes. Maybe, perhaps more creative than maybe somebody from traditional insurance industries have been thinking of doing. And then we validate our models. Sometimes you can do A/B testing based on models that would otherwise have been deployed, and you can check the difference, and based on that, deploy.
And what kind of models are these models? Are they AI models, machine learning, generative? Or are they just classic unsupervised machine learning? I mean,
Nope.
No,
they're AI models,
Okay.
and sometimes large language models, machine learning, and I think the generative piece will come in when, and that's what I really, really like about looking at traditional sectors and using newer technologies, we'll be able to soon find risks that our customers haven't even thought about. And that's really exciting to me, right? It's like, okay, maybe you should insure, or maybe you should think about underwriting XYZ, like specific business continuity problems you haven't really thought about. And that's exciting to me.
And you're grounding the models with some data, and are the models your models, or they're external models? You're producing models.
Yes.
So you're a producer of AI, not a consumer, so to speak.
No, we're producing models.
Okay, great. Now let's talk about the customer, the entrepreneurs that are doing this. So,
well, as in combination with using traditional infrastructure, right? It's like not like we're building all the infrastructure from
yeah,
scratch.
but the hardware, that's the PC or the server. You guys are doing the IP.
Yes.
So, I mean, to me, it's like we're a consumer of AI. We don't actually make AI, but we use it with data.
Yeah.
You're producing, because there's a distinction. People say they're producing AI, but they're really
they're building a
consuming.
layer sometimes on top of something that's existing, or they're using AI for a different use case, or stuff like that.
So to build an expert in the models, super agent I call it.
Yeah.
You got to do a lot of legwork.
Yeah.
Take us through what does that entail?
Yeah.
What's some of the work involved? How long does it take?
Yeah. The legwork exists of, again, finding the right people. And in my mind, it doesn't actually have to be subject matter experts, the people that build the model, but having access to synthetic data of organizations that have done some work, some simulations. So like there's authorities, government organizations. There is actually, NASA has done a lot of work on particular mobility sector. There are synthetic data sets that already exist that can be used by the right partnerships. So in the beginning, their partnerships are really, really important. Not that we're just hedging on those, but they're really important part of the validation piece.
You're accelerating the data that you're getting in, so you become a subject matter expert from the models.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Yes.
The customer that you have, they're entrepreneurial, because I've been talking a lot of this. I think that's one of my pet peeves and areas I'm focusing on right now is that there's new opportunity recognition has always been an entrepreneurial gift.
Yeah.
And they're usually crazy until it's validated, but the big ideas are out there, and there's now compute and cloud and all kinds of resource. If you do the smart data work, you can get it. What is the entrepreneurial vibe right now, if you had to kind of discuss because it's a whole nother level. It's not build an app and put it on the cloud. That was SaaS revolution. Now we're at a scale level where things are operating a little bit different, where big ideas can go after.
Yeah, I think there is an increased level of confidence when it comes to what can I do with my skill sets right now.
Yeah.
One, because there's more tools available, but also you see others do it. So why couldn't I do it? I think that idea of thinking big actually has accelerated over the last maybe 3 years especially, where people have more confidence in proposing ideas and just see what works and getting feedback and being very open about talking about it. So APIs is a big one, like things we've always used for a very long time in a certain way. Maybe now is the time to think about other ways to do it, or how to use existing infrastructure and how do you apply it to all these different sectors without just building another layer and actually owning the whole vertical piece like we talked about earlier. I think a lot of talent, again, is going away from bigger companies, both new technology industries like the Metas in the world, but also those traditional industries, right? Like real estate. If you're a really smart data scientist, this might be the time to think about how to make your industry better and how you use your skill sets to build a company in 2024.
Because it's the disruption of an industry is possible.
Yeah.
Now, you're saying.
Well, now more than before. And I think also there's been a lot of good media around these newer technologies. And what I mean by that is, why I think that's important. These more traditional industries that might be used to business models like licensing agreements are now more open to SaaS agreements and newer technological solutions because they've heard about it. It doesn't mean they know how to do it, but it might be more open to thinking, okay, how do we apply this to our industry? And a lot of news articles say, if you're an old industry and you haven't integrated these technologies in your existing stack, then you're in trouble. And I feel like they feel that.
Yeah, and they're trying to not be extinct. They want to change.
They have to change. And I think that's the narrative that's being told today, right? They have to change.
You know, we're in a breakthrough kind of culture right now where just breakthroughs are happening a lot faster. You've been involved in a lot of breakthroughs. If you had to kind of like talk about like what you're seeing as a pattern around how breakthroughs are happening, is there a pattern? I mean, we love people collaborating and riffing and meeting up, and we're seeing a lot more creativity. There's more serendipity going on right now in the market where smart minds are getting together. Sometimes it's face-to-face, sometimes it's at a festival, sometimes it's surfing or doing things, or whatever people do, have fun, but face-to-face, just the collaboration. Reminds me of the days in these industries where you have that hanging around and riffing and just
it's energy,
spark, and then go. How would you describe the current landscape? Because all ideas are on the table. There's no industry that's not susceptible for breakthrough innovation, disruptive enablement. I mean, it's disruption, but it's enabling opportunities for either an incumbent to flex, but more likely an entrepreneur or a competitor to come in and take territory or grow.
I think there's two sides of this. There is the side of, yes, there's a lot of problems to solve, and we're very energetic. There's a momentum. There's capital allocated to these newer, solutions. People come together, make it happen. Sure, they might be more likely to take a risk, partly because a lot of big companies let go of a lot of their employees over the past years. So some people might be actually actively looking for new opportunities. That's one of the reasons why I think you see more entrepreneurs. And they realize they can't just rely on the strategy of their management. It might be the right time to think about their own path and what's making sense to them today, together with those other variables being in place. I think there is also skepticism towards, everyone is after the same stuff, right? And then who's gonna win? And do I really wanna put my future on the line to compete with these other 10 companies that have similar ideas?
A race to the one spot.
Exactly. But of course, startups pivot, and maybe it's okay, and maybe one of them will pivot here, the other will pivot there, and they all can have like a successful path to deployment. The question is when that will happen, and will that keep some people away? I see that too.
Well, you got a great venture, Van. You're underwriting these big ideas, which is hard.
It's hard,
and I love the data behind it. What was the idea? What was the origination for this? Were you like woke up one day and say, "Hey, I want to help people. I want to underwrite"? What was the motivation? How did you vector into this?
Allocating capital to big assets that can make a really big difference. First, it started with more climate technologies and energy transition, something I really care about, partly because I'm from a country that's, mostly underwater, or at least partly underwater, the Netherlands. And so I feel some urgency. Being able to close that financing gap in a way that's sustainable is something that I care a lot about. And that's how we initially got on this path.
Because those projects were really capital intensive.
Yeah.
First generation problem solvers.
Yeah.
Not a lot of history.
Not a lot of history.
Underwriting.
People have lost money even investing in those assets, right? Without understanding what the capabilities are, what the risks are, how these paths could go. And I think that's a shame. And it makes sense that it did, but now it's time to, benefit.
Elliot Donnelly, I don't know if you know Elliot, met
Yes.
Elliot. He's working on some very innovative capital structure initiatives. And I think, we were talking before we came on theCUBE here about what's the exit strategy of these big ideas.
Yes.
And take over a government, or take over space, the space program for SpaceX.
Yeah.
There's no real clear path to the classic investor question of what's your exit strategy. Now there's a return option for cash, there's cash involved.
Totally.
Elliot's got this thing with his group, his tribe around how do we finance impact investment with capitalism.
Yeah.
Which I find super innovative.
Absolutely, and that's how it should
Talk
be.
about the exit strategy, kind of weird, if this gets more traction, which it sounds like it will, and it's a great cause, and it's got mission and for profit.
Yep.
I mean, you got a combination, you're the hybrid.
So I love this topic. I'm very passionate about how do you solve real problems that matter, but also build a sustainable company. I've looked at so many different business plans throughout my life, and I've been very sad seeing companies that do great things not succeed because they haven't been able to make money. I think often they sell into a customer group that's not financially stable. They're too dependent on government incentives or regulation. There's those things. Exit strategies, I think, I'm from Europe. I think we're maybe also more focused on building a big company, building really good solutions, and maybe more so than a really, really quick acquisition, which is a cultural difference. And I think that's changing a little bit in the US because you see a lot of companies grow very rapidly to a point where maybe they're out of scope for a lot of technology companies for an acquisition, right? They might be too expensive very soon. And so that's harder to do. I think the M&A field is changing a lot. But I'm curious about IPOs in the next years, like which companies will, which companies won't, and under what conditions.
Yeah, Daph, this is something I actually think a lot about over the past 20 years, and longer actually, but 20 years ago it hit me. The point about these ventures that don't go anywhere and fail, to your point earlier about a startup being out in the arena could have a trajectory, it might fail, but the pivot is the work that's gone into it, and there's leverage on that. The trajectory gives you, a pivot is stop and turn.
Yeah.
A change in direction doesn't pivot. So like you don't have to, some cases, pivot, but if you're already out there, okay, the target's changed, the game's changed.
Yeah.
You have economies of scale built into the trajectory.
Totally.
And when I was in college, younger generation, knows why I'm passionate about open source. I've said this on theCUBE before. I used to deal software in college. Like, didn't they have open source? No, we would pirate software.
Yeah.
Maybe that's kind of a little bit over the top and too much information, but
no.
Open source changed the world.
Yeah.
And I remember companies that would build all this proprietary software, and then if they got shut down, the code was gone. The code was gone.
Yeah.
And I think we're at an era now that you're pointing out where people who go for the mission/capitalism angle should be recognized like open source. And don't lose the magic if something changes in the market.
Yes,
or,
absolutely. Or
is that a stretch?
But everybody makes hedges on the market. And I think that's normal. And in the beginning of a company, you cannot spread your opportunities too much. You have to focus. So you better make the right bet or pivot. And I like the topic of pivoting. I think that's the hardest thing to do. For entrepreneurs and probably also investors even, right? Like pivoting from a thesis because you're attached to things. You're proud of what you're working on. You build relationships with people. You're known for a specific topic. And yet I think that's the most important thing to do. And what I see a lot is a lot of those ventures that we talk about, they might gotten themselves too deep into one particular customer group and then making very customized products that's only applicable to like 1 or 2 or 3 customers, and then really counting on those to succeed, and not building in even options to pivot from an infrastructure perspective, not even building relationships, but actually building out the infrastructure.
Sub-optimized decision-making based upon either pressure from the board, make money.
Or ego.
Or ego, I mean, that's just bad call.
Yeah.
Well, let's get back to the mission at hand, because I think the idea that mission and capitalism, this is new. I mean, usually it was very bespoke. Impact investing did something over here, entrepreneurs did here, see you later. But now there's a nexus. Share with the folks out there that don't know this, why you like that, why you're so passionate about it.
Yeah, I think because we mentioned capitalism, we look at big opportunities, and impact investing, there's multiple ways to do it, but I think also we're looking at the biggest part of the world that might not be part of our today's living standard yet. There's a lot of people that that comes with opportunity. I think there's a lot of people to bring on to different product development, but also there's a lot of capital allocated to impact investing, and impact can be fixing real problems, but it comes with finance, especially if you build a sustainable business model. So again, building products that really solve problems is something I'm passionate about, simply because you spend your entire day on it. So why would you want to spend it on something you don't care about? To make it very
There's
simple.
alignment there.
Yeah.
It's just got to get it done. All right, I got to ask you some personal questions because fascinated by your background. So first of all, Amazon Prime Air, that's the drone delivery thing. That you worked on that. That's super cool, of course. We're very close to Amazon. Andy Jassy is a friend and the team over there.
Nice.
Waymo.
Yeah.
Huge success. SpaceX. We all know what that is.
Yeah.
Rivian, you worked on that
Yeah.
piece too. You've had a variety of great, cool things. What is the coolest thing that you could share, or experiences that you could highlight that say, well, I was up close to that and that was like really cool.
Yeah.
Whether it worked out or not, what were some cool experiences? Because those are like really cool
I'm
jobs.
thinking
Not
what I
everyone
can
has
share.
access to those kind of projects.
I think it's the same actually across every company, which is coming in really, really early and just being told, you know, we need to figure this out. We don't know how to get to market. We don't know who our final customer is going to be. We don't know what their requirements are going to be. But we know that this is a problem that we're solving, and we think this is the right way to do it. So how are we going to do it? And so just getting signal in those early days, being able to ask the right questions, work with the right people, find really, really smart people. So I have a chance to like work with people from the White House, and like, you know, as a new immigrant in the United States, it was very impressive. And people who have really high positions at, you know, federal aviation authorities, NASA, really genius people that I got to work with, and just being able to be thrown at the same problem with the point of figure it out. And that's been the same at every single team, at every company I've been part of. Like really the 0 to 1 and the 1 to 10 stage is what I find the most fun, because it's so chaotic. And there are so many weird things you can do, right? You build a real close bond with your teammates because you're like family. You spend all your time together, and nobody's ever happy with the results of your work because you never know if it's actually
puzzle
good.
every day, and you have fun doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
What was the coolest experience you've witnessed on those projects? Good, bad, or ugly? I won't and something interesting that you could share.
Yeah, working with special forces at SpaceX and just seeing how they would use these newer technologies in ways I never imagined. And you know, sitting around a table with people who have crazy backgrounds, and I can't really share what they've done, but you can imagine. And then them calling you after a mission saying, thank you, that was really helpful. A mission that you read about in the news. And that's really nice to feel like you did something to help people that matter.
Well, definitely, thanks for helping us on this segment. Great content, and good luck with the new venture. I love what you do, and you're helping people move the needle on the ventures. Thanks for coming on. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Same.
Okay, so theCUBE's here. We're breaking it down. We're in Silicon Valley, Wall Street, connecting the communities. This is our Silicon Valley CUBE plus NYSE wired community. We're connecting AI CFOs in this segment, as well as AI innovators. I'm John Furrier, host of theCUBE. Thanks for watching.